To everyone in the room, virtual participants in Zoomopolis, and anyone watching the recording later on, greetings. My name is Ebony Bledsoe, and this talk is about a cast of characters that most astrologers don't work with and may have never even heard of. The planets I'm about to introduce you to are hypothetical, but they show up in real charts with real patterns and real precision. And I'm not here to debate whether or not they're real. I just came to demonstrate how they work. And if you stick with me through the presentation and through all these different planetary pictures, I think you'll walk away with a new understanding of what's possible in a chart and what's been missing. All right, y'all ready to rock? All right. Am I ready to rock?
Yeah.
Let's see, it's not clicking forward. There we go. Okay. All right, a little bit about me before we get into this. I'm a professional astrologer. My name is Ebony Bledsoe, and I am a hypnotist and strategist as well. And I identify as an astrology maximalist. I like my charts thick, okay? I want all the planets, the parts, some asteroids, you get it. I like junk in the trunk in my charts, okay? And I don't want just one technique. I like to layer them on, see the same story told through different lenses, lots of testimonials, because you need at least 3, in the words of Michael Bryan, for it to be legit. And I'm especially drawn to the parts of astrology that a lot of people tend to overlook. So anything that reveals a hidden structure or unstated tensions, I'm all over it. I have a Scorpio stellium. And in the words of Marie Kondo, I love mess. I do. Yes. I love drama, but ideally when it doesn't involve me. And I think astrologers tend to have a little bit of that in all of us, right? Yeah. And I have a Uranus and Neptune placement on the midheaven. So honestly, sometimes my life does feel like a TV show. And given that and my love of drama, it makes it only right today that I treat today's presentation like a dramatic reality show. Okay. As if life weren't dramatic enough already, right? Yeah. So since we're treating this like a little bit of a series, especially in this weird season of Earth that we're all living in, here's what's up for tonight's episode, okay? So we'll start with a little bit of lore, some backstory behind Uranian astrology and the dial. Nothing too technical, just enough for you to be able to follow the plot. And this is a quick overview, right? Because the purpose of this presentation is to talk about the TransNeptunian planets. We don't need to know everything about Uranian astrology in this single presentation. So I'm not going to do that to you or to myself. And then we'll meet the cast, the 8 TransNeptunian planets. Each of them has a distinct energy, a few surprising chart appearances that we'll show, and some very strong opinions. And at the end, we'll regroup for a little bit of reunion style reflection. We'll connect the dots, sit with what we've learned, and then we'll open things up for questions. And confessions are welcome. All right, so let's talk about where this all started from. Uranian astrology was primarily developed in the early 20th century by Alfred Witte in what became known as the Hamburg School of Astrology. His goal was to make astrology more precise and dependable, something that could be replicated. So instead of relying on signs and houses, this system focuses more on things like geometry, symmetry, and timing. And during World War I, Witte and his colleague, Friedrich Seigren, were trying to use astrology to predict when Russia was going to attack Germany. So when would the bombs fall? And they had pretty solid records and data, but using the traditional methods, it just wasn't working. They couldn't predict when things would happen. So they started experimenting and noticed that when they used a system that was based on planetary symmetry, using a special tool called the 90-degree dial, they could start to time these attacks with accuracy. And with the dial, which effectively organizes the chart into symmetrical patterns, we get a dynamic view of looking at the chart because you're constantly pointing to different planets or different chart factors and seeing what additional planets are being brought in by symmetry and association. So this allows us to focus on hard aspects, which are aspects of manifestation. These are the ones that make things happen. If you like Hamilton, you want to be in the room where it happens. That's where the hard aspects are, okay? So concrete events happen with hard aspects. It's not just psychological. You can read Uranian charts, or you can use Uranian astrology to do psychological analysis of a client, but it's really great for concrete stuff, like actual things that are going to happen in the world and in a client's life. So I think it's particularly impressive in that way. Eventually, this whole body of work becomes known as the Uranian system of astrology. And that's in part because in the 1930s, when astrology wasn't really safe to practice in Nazi Germany, and most countries outside of Germany weren't trying to hear anything about the Hamburg School from Germany, they renamed it to the Uranian system of astrology with the acronym USA. Safe, right? They might want to change it back now, I don't know. But since we're about to meet this full cast of planets, I want to make sure we're using the same language, because some of the language from Uranian astrology, for even some of the key terms, is a little bit different, or they carry some additional meanings rather. So like the midheaven or the ascendant, the nodes, they all have a little bit of a different sort of thing that you may be different from what you're used to if you're coming to from a different lens of astrology. So the meridian or the midheaven is, in Uranian astrology, represents the native soul or the spirit. It governs their ambition, their position, their sense of purpose and status in the world. So we get a look at their personality through the midheaven. It's the me, the my, the I. And if you were watching a movie of your life on a screen, the person playing you doing all of the things, that would be your meridian or midheaven. And from a predictive and timing standpoint, the meridian also represents the moment. So we'll get to see that show up in timing charts later. And it's very Wendy Williams, you know, she said, she's an icon, she's a legend, and she is the moment. That's the meridian. And back to timing briefly, the moon in Uranian astrology represents the hour, and the sun represents the day. And they also maintain the other meanings that you know about for the sun and the moon, the mother, you know, that sort of thing. That's the same. And among many other things. The ascendant in Uranian astrology represents the native's environment. It reflects the relationships that are formed through proximity. So what's happening, what's going on in the area, who or what is around. The moon's nodes are also a bit different. So they're more neutral in Uranian astrology. We don't really have the south and north distinction. It's just a node is a node is a node. That's it. And instead, the nodes indicate points of contact that create connection, obligation, and karmic entanglement. So sometimes I think of the nodes as links or actual channels between things. It gets very intense when you look at the nodes in your chart from this perspective. And then finally, we have the cardinal points. So that's 0 degrees of all the cardinal signs. And so that would be Aries, Libra, Cancer, so Capricorn. I did them out of order, but it's fine. But for the purposes of today's talk, it's a little more nuanced than that, but for today's talk, we'll just leave it there. So when a planet reaches 0 degrees of a cardinal sign, the Earth is strongly affected on a mundane level. So for example, we got a planet that's gonna hit one of those tonight. Which one is that? Saturn. So we're gonna feel that Saturn deeply on a mundane level. You're all brilliant things, by the way. So we're gonna feel that Saturn. And when a native, or the person's chart who it is, has a planet on the cardinal points, AKA it's called the world axis, by the way, the native connects with the world through that planet. So for example, if you read in my bio, it mentions my Venus-Saturn combination on the world axis. So my Venus-Saturn story was going to be prominent anyway. I'd rather talk about injecting fun into dry subjects than talk about my burdensome love life, right? So I try to shift the narrative. And I used to say that I was a mullet personified, business in the front, party in the back. But then I realized that could be taken in a direction that I wasn't quite comfortable with. So we left that alone. But I do have a Scorpio stellium, and I told you all that I love the mess, and my mind does live in the gutter, so I don't know what to tell you. Before we move on to the planets, we need to have a quick dialogue about the dial, just again. In real life, it is a dynamic thing. It's not just a static chart. There's an arrow that swirls around the dial. It's almost like a game of spin the bottle, except in this case, we already know who we want to kiss. So we make sure the bottle lands directly where it needs to land. And it looks like, by the looks of things, you all are a smart audience. Even the people in Zoomopolis that I can't see, I just know it. I sense the brilliance. So I need your help a little bit. If we want to check out the dial for the native's love story, which planet would we point the bottle towards? Yes, Venus, exactly. And if we want to know about the physical vitality of a person, which planet might we look at? Yes, the sun. Don't be scared. It's a safe space. The sun, that's correct. And this last example is a bit of a pop quiz. If we want to know about a person's karmic connections, where do we point the bottle? Yes, you were listening. Amazing job. I knew y'all look smart. So in practice, we would be shifting the bottle or the arrow around to look at different factors in the chart. But for this talk, since I needed slides without video, I didn't do that. Just have screenshots of specific points so that we can follow along, but it'll keep it much simpler that way. And today we're really just going to be looking at midpoints. So this kind of the space between two planets and things that land on that space. But I want you to focus on the highlighted planets that I'm showing you and how they're showing up together, because a lot of things will be showing up on the slide and it's easy to get overwhelmed. And I know as astrologers, we want to see everything and connect all the dots. But I'm just going to ask you to focus today on the little highlighted part, but do your best. I can't ask you to not be you. All right, so that's where the story is. It's in the highlighted pieces that we're going to focus on. And these first two charts actually are not highlighted, but this is the chart of the day. We're going to play spin. Oh, thank you. Not there yet. Oh, okay, my slides didn't get updated. That's a bummer. All right. Well, in the chart of today, AKA right now, at well, it's from 10:30 a.m. In that chart, the ascendant equaled Venus, and the ascendant also equaled the sun plus the node. So with that, what might that mean? Any thoughts?
Perfect moment for you to do your debut.
Yes. Venus plus, somebody said the perfect moment for me to do my NORWAC debut. Yes. But with Venus and ascendant, that means that Venus and the ascendant are together. And this is a combination for amorous, lovable acquaintances, evidence of love, harmonious relations to the place, being treated well by others, and others who are looking for the native, loving acquaintances. Also dermatitis. So hopefully that's not an issue for anyone here, but probably is if it's here. But I definitely feel lots of love in the room from friends who are here, near and far. And I'm very fortunate. All right, also with Venus equaling the ascendant, it could also represent beauty in the environment, or better said, I'm surrounded by baddies, okay? Y'all look good. And I don't know exactly if the people in Zoomopolis are technically included in the environment, because Alpha Vita didn't have Zoom or the internet back then. But for the purposes of this talk, I'm gonna make an executive decision and say, yeah, y'all are hot too. All right, so give yourselves a round of applause for being fine. All right, so we've also got a sun node there that can represent connections to the public, and then a day of meeting karmic connections in the environment. So you might meet somebody special today. And then the meridian chart, which you also can't see in the slide. But when we look at the meridian, that's to see what's happening in the moment, what's happening next. So in that moment, Mars was on the meridian, right? So there was some other stuff there, but that was the main story. And no, we were not fighting in the room at 10:30, but Mars can also represent making arrangements or giving orders to other people, taking action, orchestrating events, pulling oneself together. And I was definitely doing that when Mars was on the MC. So don't overthink the formulas and all of that. Don't overthink the dial or the arrow once you eventually do see it. Just focus on the key planets and that'll be good.
The key planets, you mean like whatever's on the cardinal points around the...
It'll be highlighted. So I'll be pointing at different things using the spin the bottle method, and I'll mention what they are. But I think we'll move on. All right, so we've covered the foundation. So let's meet the 8 TransNeptunian planets. It's so funny even mentioning the TransNeptunian planets because when I do, people's eyes often glaze over, right? It's kind of like they get frozen in this montage. If you think about 80s or 90s movies, whenever they have a science scene, it's like formulas and math. That's I can see that happening in their minds. But these planets are called the TransNeptunian planets because they were beyond Neptune. Pluto hadn't been officially discovered yet. So if it had been, maybe they would have been called the Transplutonian planets. But we'll see what happens in time because they haven't been named as planets. You know, we'll see. But also Pluto was not tracked. It was tracked by calculations before it was discovered. Time will tell. And the TransNeptunian planets are the primary thing that separates cosmobiology from Uranian astrology. The cosmobiologists were like, this dial thing, we love it. The midpoint's obsessed. But these planets y'all made up, that's where we draw the line. We're out. So I appreciate the fact that you're here ready to lean in and learn about what they left behind. And for each of these planets, I will share a couple of natal charts and an event as well to see how the planets show up. So we're gonna get going. Here's our lovely cast. The real hypothetical TransNeptunian planets of Uranian astrology. We have 8 players, 8 distinct energies, each with their own point of view and their own kind of drama. Some stir things up directly and some kind of operate in the background. But once they show up, the storyline shifts. And from this point on, we're going to go planet by planet, but I do want to share a trigger warning. We're going to be talking about some hard stuff here and there because it's a part of life. It's not all gloom and doom though, but we will talk about death, violence, war, and billionaires. So that can be triggering for some. So do what you need to do to take care of yourself during this presentation, but otherwise, get comfortable and let's meet them properly. If you've ever watched any Real Housewives series, you will know that they all begin with the same introductory format. One by one, a cast member's image appears and they have a sassy little tagline. So that's what we're doing today. For example, Nene Leakes in season 2, she pops on the screen and says, I don't keep up with the Joneses. I am the Joneses. So we'll do that for each of our TransNeptunians. And before we dive in, can we get a little commotion for my Real Housewives outfit today? Yeah. All right, so the first one up, we have Cupido. That's its headshot, its glyph. Cupido says, I hosted the dinner party. What happens at the table is not my problem. It combines the glyph of Venus and Jupiter and brings their 2 energies together as well. Cupido is all about togetherness, but not necessarily harmony. It rules things like art and marriage and weddings and families and organizations and group projects. Anything where the people are connected around a shared purpose or identity. When conditions are favorable, Cupido will bring sociability, aesthetic cohesion, and that we're doing this together kind of energy. But the Cupido experience varies greatly depending on the planets that it's paired with. So like in traditional astrology, planets aren't really good or bad. It depends on how they're acting together. When I was in college, quick story, I took this class called the Psychology of Consumers, and my professor assigned us a group project and let us select our own groups, which was great news because my bestie was in my class and she was smart, hardworking, and creative, just like me. And we looked at each other like, group project? Bet, we're doing this. We're in it. We had history, we had synergy, we had color-coded notes and matching ambition. We were already salivating, ready for another A+, another day, another A, okay? And we were just like Jordan and Pippen, Kobe and Shaq, Steph and Clay, high-fiving, chest bumping, ready, right? And then our professor, of course, throws a plot twist. She adds another group member to our team. We'll call him Barry. Barry didn't have a group. We didn't know him, but we were optimistic because we attended an elite university after all. And everyone's trying to do well, right? And if they're not, they at least are wealthy enough to hire somebody to do well on their behalf. So we were like, sure, Barry can join our group. Let's divide and conquer. Fast forward to presentation week, Barry turns in his part late. And when I tell you the work was bad, it was uneditable. It was useless. So our A+ project was flushed down the toilet. We got a C-. Live it. Live it. And that, my friends, was a deeply Neptune Cupido moment, right? You dream of this perfect group, but the harmony was dissolved in disappointment. And just to complete the story, we did snitch on Barry. We wrote a formal email and got our grades raised. So that's key. But the damage was done. But you can think of Cupido as the glue that holds things together, whether or not they should be together. That's the question. All right. Got our first case study. Let's look at Cupido in action, okay? Someone who really embodies it in so many ways, the good, the bad, the ugly. And I don't want you to get too lost in the dial itself, right? Let's focus on the midpoint tree in the middle, this little yellow section. Nick Cannon is a multi-hyphenate. He is an actor, a musician, a comedian, a writer, producer. He's an incredibly artistic guy. And he has a successful and long career in the entertainment industry. So when we look at his career through a Uranian lens, we see this really striking combination of Sun equals Mercury plus Cupido. So you don't have to worry so much about the equals and the plus, just think of the planets together. So they're in contact, and that can represent someone who is an artist, someone who thinks of the family, the musician. And those are some of the things that are coming up for him. He's definitely an artist and a musician. He plays the drums, the harmonica, the synthesizer. He's a performer on every level. And with 12 children by 6 different women, let's say he's got an expansive family aesthetic as well. And we could also say that he's a man of a witty family with the Mercury, because he does produce and lead a TV show called Wild 'N Out, where there are 2 teams competing against each other to see which team is the funniest with their unique style of improv comedy. He's a Mercury Cupido guy through and through. Carrying on with Cupido and Nick Cannon, if we spin the bottle to look at Nick's intimate connections through the nodes, what do we see? We find the moon and Cupido. So if you want a cheat code, you can look at these little boxes on the screen. Moon Cupido, oh, I forgot to advance slides, sorry. Moon Cupido together gives us female family members, or wives and mothers. And you know, in astrology, we get a little loose with the terms wives and what the husbands, right? It's more about the seriousness of the relationship versus the piece of paper. And Nick's intimate connections are his wives, the mothers of his children. And many men who have the moon Cupido tend to be known for their connections with women. Aside from all the other great things that Nick has done, he's probably best known for this. We can see his family tree here. It's a little outdated. He's had another child since then. And my last comment on Nick for now is that he did create a song called Gigolo that was really popular at one point. And he's bragging about the women that he's had in his life. So that's very moon Cupido node behavior. And we definitely could have gotten here by traditional means. I don't have his traditional natal chart up, but he does have Jupiter, Saturn, Sun, Moon, all in the 5th house in Libra. We could have gotten there. But a Uranian shows us a different way to do it. And we're on to a less sorted example of Cupido. Next, we've got Matt Groening, the creator of The Simpsons. Thank you. In his chart, we see this midpoint equation. Sun equals Cupido equals Uranus plus Neptune. So just knowing about Uranus and Neptune, you can have some ideas, right, about what that family story could look like. Now, through a Uranian lens, the sun can represent a man. And when paired with Cupido, you might expect a husband or a family man. Then you add Uranus in, which is a little weird, unstable, rebellious, and Neptune, which brings vision, imagination, illusion, and depending on the day, escapism, delusion, drugs, alcohol, toxicity. So you can insert your own keywords from your own planetary lexicon, right? But in this case, we get Homer Simpson, the husband who is a weird drinker. And this same formula could reflect Groening himself, who is the man whose art is a futuristic vision. The Simpsons has become widely known for predicting events before they happen. In 2000, there was an episode called Bart to the Future in which Donald Trump was the president. And on the show, Donald Trump completely tanks the economy, and then Lisa runs for president and wins. So of course, this is our current president and the economy is tanking, so we'll see what happens. Futurama is another show that he created, and it's about this oddball group of characters who live in the future. Very Uranus, Neptune. It's got a Cyclops here and everything. All right, one last Cupido example before we move on. The Academy Awards, or the Oscars, happened a few months back. Nothing too crazy here, but from the dial, we can see the ascendant equals midheaven and Cupido. So in this moment, the MC, or meridian, in this place, the ascendant, we have Cupido, a party, a gathering, a group is happening. And what kind of group is it? Cupido equals Neptune plus node. Any guesses? What's that? Movie stars, actors, yes. Creatives, yeah, maybe people on drugs too. Probably having a good night. Okay. That's it for Cupido. Moving on to Hades. We're saving questions till the end because there's a lot to get through, but I'll definitely want to come back to you. I promise I don't have personal stories for all of these. Hades says, I don't air the dirty laundry, I archive it. Hades combines the energy of the moon and Saturn to bring up what's hidden, shameful, decaying. It governs illness, secrecy, long-term suffering, and what we probably just call mess, which I love. Garbage, misery, decay, shriveling, poverty, but also ritual, research, preservation. It tends to show up in death charts and charts related to crime, but it also shows up in the charts of doctors, psychologists, therapists, anybody who works with what hurts and what's hidden or what nobody else wants to touch. That is the Hades work. And traditionally, astrology has been a Hades kind of profession, right? And for many people in the world, it still is. You know, you have people like Adam Grant, who's one of the most influential management thinkers in the world, who poo-poos our field of study. He's posted blogs saying that astrologers don't think for themselves. People who listen to are into astrology just believe anything and are full of themselves. So some astrologers who have muggle jobs may still feel like they can't fully come out of the astrology closet. And that's a little bit of a tangent, but Hades is the cleanup crew. It's the coroner, the forensic expert, and the analyst. It's the one who walks into the rot, not to shame it, but to understand it. Right, so this is one of our Hades case studies. On the left, you'll see Mara Williams, who is the co-host of the podcast, Sisters Who Kill. They focus on true crime. And in her chart, we see the sun plus node equals Hades, or we could also read it as the sun plus Hades equals node, which represents acquaintance with criminals. And in the podcast, she tells the stories of Black women who are murderers, bringing attention to their lives in cases that are often overlooked. The show is very Hades. There's no sugarcoating anything, no turning away. They're blunt, they curse, they talk about abuse. They use African-American vernacular English, AAVE, which some people might consider lowbrow or kind of a Hades sort of thing. But I'm obsessed, I love it, check it out. And in the photo, you can also see her co-host Taz, though I don't have Taz's birth chart info. She's so Scorpio, we don't even know her real name. So it's hard to get the birth data. All right, next up, this is one of my clients, because Hades is not all bad as we saw. In her chart, she does have the sun equals Hades. You can see Hades down here and the sun up here, which can literally mean a problematic man. And according to her, that speaks to her ex-husband, or it could represent her spirit, her vitality. And sometimes the sun does give us clues to a person's profession as well. So using her vitality, her profession focuses on old stuff, the Hades thing. Cupido is there as well with Admetos, which I haven't talked about yet, but basically Admetos limits things, like a mega Saturn. Her vitality and profession centers on a curated Admetos collection, Cupido, of old stuff, Hades. And it's not like a Goodwill, right? These are luxury brands, designer pieces, and clientele of women who have money. So that's where the moon Jupiter comes in. That's who she's supporting. And she's also kind of a wealthy woman herself. Next up, we've got this eclipse. So in the early stages of the COVID-19 pandemic, Hades was active in mundane charts. And this is the eclipse chart right before the lockdown, which we see Neptune and Hades down here, which translates to grave epidemics. And we have that there with the eclipse for the sun and the moon. You'll also notice Hades Vulcanus there as well, and we haven't gotten to Vulcanus yet, but just know that it amplifies anything that it touches. So when we see Hades and Vulcanus equal sun, rough times, it points to a body that's dealing with a lot of problems, dealing with a forceful illness. And after that, things really picked up on a wide scale, as you know. On to Zeus. Zeus says, I light it up and I don't miss. We have here Zeus, which talks about focused, directed energy. It's a creative force and it's on a mission. So when Zeus is active, there's a goal, a spark, a plan, and the will to execute. Think about combustion or engines and organized fire. It's not chaos, it is pressure with a plan. Restrained fire, deliberate energy, planned efforts is what makes movement meaningful. Very controlled energy, physically and temperamentally. And it's expressed through wars, oftentimes, weapons, uniformed forces, mechanical devices, all that sort of thing, sex, procreation, and anger. And it can manifest explosively and rashly, but when it's controlled, it does result in creativity and inventiveness, productivity through one's own effort and leadership. Here's our first example. This is Kimberly Bryant. She has the sun equals Zeus in her chart, which can represent a person who initiates powerful action, somebody who channels fire into form. You can see that Sun Zeus is the creative leader, the planner, the organizer. And she does have a background as someone who works as a coder and technologist. And when she couldn't find a program for her daughter to learn to code, where she wasn't going to be the only Black kid or the only girl in the room, she started Black Girls Code. She's the founder of that. And she's a very spicy woman. Uber offered to give her $150,000, and she said no because it didn't align with her principles. And she ended up getting a larger sum from Lyft. Also, Uber gave that's way more money to Girls Who Code, which was a more open organization. We've got Octomom here. Yeah. Nadia Suleiman. Hopefully I don't traumatize anybody with this image. But if you remember, the meridian is the person, the soul, the I am in Uranian astrology. With Nadia's chart, we see the I am meridian equals Venus plus Zeus, which means creative love or burning passion. So she is literally the progenitor, the carrier of seed, the sower. And progenitor is another word for parent. So she's born to be a parent, essentially. And she is the carrier of the seed. We can come back and look at the other parts of the chart later, maybe, if we have time. Right, we also have an event example, the chart for the Ukraine invasion, dated February 14th, 2022. And at that moment, we see ascendant equals Uranus, Zeus here. The ascendant, of course, describes the environment. And we're showing what's happening at the ground level. Uranus is sudden disruption. Zeus is force, ignition, directed pressure. So together, that combination literally translates to a sudden outbreak of war. You had explosions, violence, movement, fire with a target in the most literal and devastating way. On to Kronos. Kronos says, I don't follow the rules. I make them. Kronos is a planet of authority, elevation, and command. Its glyph brings together the crescent of spirit or the moon with the cross of matter, Saturn, symbolizing a principle or force that sits above the rest. Kronos represents laws, rules, systems, and the people who make or enforce them. So we're talking rulers, judges, lawyers, teachers, doctors, anybody who's in charge of anything really. And it can show up as a rank or a title, but also as altitude, airplanes, towers, platforms, people, or anything that's literally high up. And in the chart, Kronos can signal someone who demands respect or gets it automatically because of their position. It represents power, institutional, structural, and elevated. It can also be somebody who's stuck up. High-minded, that's what my dad used to say about me. Right, here's our first one. Warren Buffett, definitely a Kronos sort of guy. We see Kronos equals his son, Jupiter. And the sun is the person, right, or the man. Jupiter brings expansion, luck, wealth, reach. And Kronos ties these two together in a very clear picture, ruling through wealth or gaining power and respect through fortune. In Buffett's case, he's definitely a rich guy. He's not just rich though, he's a respected authority about being rich. That is Kronos, power, elevation, and institutional influence, because the markets move when Warren Buffett speaks. And you could look at Kronos in your chart to see where you have some authority or where you might have leadership potential. Next, we've got Jasmine Crockett, US representative from Texas. In her chart, she has Sun equals Zeus plus Kronos. And that combination is often interpreted as a fighter by nature or a commanding officer. And Zeus brings force, initiative. Kronos brings the rank and authority. So when the sun ties into that, we get a person who naturally operates from a place of power, pressure, and control. And Crockett is known for her sharpness, her volume, and her presence, whether she's speaking in a hearing or clapping back by calling somebody a bleached, blonde, bad-built, butch body, you feel the command of Kronos with her. And for our last example for Zeus, we have the chart for the moment that Flight 11 struck the North Tower on September 11, 2001. And on that day, the sun, Kronos equaled the Aries point. Kronos rules authority, again, elevation, things that are in the sky, planes, governments, towers. And the Aries point was activated, right? And that activates things in a global way. So when Kronos hits Aries, it points to the major events on Earth, especially those involving institutions, altitude, and power. So when this event happened, it was a day of major events on the Earth, but also a day when things are high up and they're impacting Earth. On to Apollon. Apollon says, I'm a grower and a shower. The glyph itself combines Jupiter, growth and abundance, with Gemini, information and multiplicity. This is scale and intelligence combined. Systems of knowledge are very connected to Apollon. Apollon governs big picture thinking, business, cosmopolitan knowledge, international reach, and it rules commerce, trade, success, science. So if you want to see where you're going to be successful in life, you want to look at those Apollon midpoints for things, like the Sun Apollon midpoint. It's where you can seek success. Pluto Apollon is some of the greatest success you'll experience. So get the keys to success in this lecture. You can add Apollon to really any planet to see how success in that thing that the planet governs is going to show up for you in your chart. And I happen to have Mercury Apollon in my chart, and I have a degree in international trade. It's very literal. And we've got one of the richest people in the world, most successful from a financial standpoint. We've got Richard Branson, founder of the Virgin Group. In his chart, he has MC plus Kronos equals Pluto plus Apollon. And the meridian, again, is who he is. Kronos is leadership and command. Pluto is transformation. Apollon is reach, scale, commerce. So this formula points to somebody who leads far-reaching transformations, especially through business systems or international developments. And that's who he is. He's the CEO, the builder, the innovator. He expanded into airlines, telecom, music, media, space, you name it. That's the Apollon story. And here we have Anthony Bourdain, celebrity chef, author, travel documentarian, written lots of books about cooking and traveling, which is very moon, Cupido, Apollon. The moon is the food, Cupido is the arts, but also the family. And Apollon is the travel and success. And interestingly, looking at the moon part of this chart, the moon Cupido, his mom was a key figure in his success. She helped him get his first New York Times article published, and that was what led into much of his success in publishing. So it's kind of cool to see how the planets show up in multiple ways. Here's the United Nations. So there is actually a combination for the United Nations, and it's Cupido Kronos. But on the day that it was formed, the Aries, Jupiter and Apollon were on the Aries point, which means expansion of good fortune in general. And the point of the United Nations was to maintain international peace and security, develop friendly relations among nations, and promote international cooperation. That was the goal in the beginning. Admetos. This is an interesting one. It's one of my favorites. It's all about depth, contraction, excuse me. It's dense, deliberate, heavy. It deals with stillness and pressure and crystallization. As I said, it's like Taurus, as it's very Saturn oriented, like Taurus and Saturn together. So if you think about the Seven of Pentacles card in the tarot, that is the Saturn and Taurus card. And that person's not going anywhere anytime soon. They're not growing anything. But this planet can represent restriction, but it can also mean focus. There's conservatism associated with it, dullness, coldness, freezing. Admetos shows where things don't move quickly. It can be very painful and create conditions at the same time for deepness, clarity, resilience. It's the pause we didn't ask for, but sometimes we need it. Kind of has a 12th house energy to it. All right, circulation or rotation is also connected with Admetos. So if you think about spinning a coin, it'll spin, and its orbit or rotation will get narrower and move more inward until it eventually gets narrower and narrower, narrower and narrower, and stops spinning, and it goes to a standstill. It's about inertia and things grinding to a halt. So sometimes Admetos can indicate death as well, because you know who's really good at standing still? A dead person. Okay. Admetos also deals with specialization. For example, a Mars Admetos combination could represent specialized work, right? It's about going deep. Sorry about that. Okay. There's a sense of stability as well. Gravity works overtime with Admetos. So we're already on the next slide. You can see a very Admetos person. This is John Brower-Minnick, who was estimated at over 1,400 pounds. He's the largest recorded man in history, or heaviest recorded man in history. He's American, and yeah, you can see here on the slide, it says Sun equals Chiron plus Admetos. This is the body or the man that is isolated, if we want to use a Chiron word, isolated, sick, through Admetos, immobility, heaviness, limitation. And interestingly, in addition to being a heavy person, he also had Admetos show up in his profession. He was a taxi driver. He had a water taxi service. So he's driving around in circles in a vehicle that's rotating. And at some point, he did actually lose a significant amount of weight. He was hospitalized for about 2 years, and he lost about 700 or 900 pounds during that time. But unfortunately, gained it all back and passed away. And he also has a world record because his wife was only about 120 pounds. So they had the biggest gap in terms of a couple that was married in weight. All right, another Admetos story. Thich Nhat Hanh. Yes, so more positive one. He has Admetos equals Pluto plus Apollon. And we necessarily wouldn't pay attention to that on its own because those planets are very slow movers, but he does have it brought in by the Sun-Uranus combination. So he's this revolutionary, rebellious guy with Uranus, Sun. And what is his rebellion? He is a Buddhist monk was a Buddhist monk from Vietnam and was a pioneer in bringing Buddhism and mindfulness to the West. He's a spiritual leader, poet, and best known for his teachings and writings on mindfulness and nonviolence. And he coined the term engaged Buddhism, which was a practice that emerged from needing to respond to world crises, particularly the Vietnam War. So he created this community called the Plum Village in France that becomes the West's largest and most active Buddhist monastery. So he's definitely creating a radical change in the world through stillness. And this one, I think I'm missing some slides, but we have, the goal here was to show the precision and timing of Uranian astrology. But in this particular slide, we see George Floyd's suffocation. So most of us who are here are probably aware that George Floyd was killed in May 25th, 2020. So almost exactly 5 years ago today. And it was death by Admetos. We see he has meridian equals Mars equals Admetos plus Vulcanus. So that combination, I forgot to mention the book that I'm getting a lot of these combinations from, The Rules for Planetary Pictures. That is the name of the Bible, basically, in Uranian astrology. And the combination for some of this together is to be harshly treated by fate. We also see jamming, compression, heaviness. That's all a part of this story. And what's interesting in this case is we have a very clear minute-to-minute timeline. I can share these slides a little bit later. So after that happens, then the knee is removed from his neck at 8:27 p.m. And then that moment, the meridian, which is the moment, equals Sun plus Hades. So in that moment, there are physical troubles. Someone is being oppressed or hindered in developing their body. So he's not continuing to grow in that position. That's also the body decaying, infirmity, debility. All those are Sun, Hades pictures. It's also pursued by misfortune. And then at the time of death at 9:25 p.m., we saw meridian equals Neptune plus Pluto. That can be seen as a sneaking crisis or oppression, again, in developing the body. And he also had there was also meridian equals Neptune plus Cupido. So grief in the society, disappointment in the society, all that's coming into being. Also secrecy is one of the pictures that comes up too. And yeah. Okay. On to Vulcanus. Time check. Vulcanus is force. It is strength, momentum, compounding energy, and it doesn't knock, it bursts through. It says, I'm not just powerful, I'm unstoppable. Vulcanus can be empowering or overwhelming, and it shows up when someone or something is being pushed beyond the normal limits. Think of a freight train that's gaining speed, okay? You can bring together great physical and mental efforts with Vulcanus. It's almost like Mars and Pluto together, but even more intense. Very superhuman power, overwhelming strength, supreme force, and the highest might. I couldn't think of a better example than Serena Williams. Serena has Mars equals Zeus plus Vulcanus. Oh, thank you. She has Mars plus Zeus equals Vulcanus. She just embodies strength, and Mars, of course, represents our action, our aggression, our strength in terms of physical action. And for Zeus Vulcanus, we have machine power loaded with an urge to be active, all forces directed to one point. Serena's serve, her fastest serve, was 128.6 miles per hour. That's 207 kilos per hour for the folks who are using the metric system. And there have been faster serves, but ultimately, I don't want to be on the other side of this. Okay? I don't want her directing her Zeus at me. And Coco Gauff is another tennis player who has Sun equals Mars plus Vulcanus. She has a very strong, super fast serve as well. And Vulcanus says, I got the power. All right, we brought back Nick. I don't have a picture of him on here, but Nick Cannon is back in this slide. for Pluto plus Vulcanus, which can, with the sun, it can represent a man whose body has an unusual capacity to regenerate, who changes to new ways or different approaches to nourish the body. There have been some rumors about some of that with some of the illnesses that he's had. Also, unhealthy rush development, transformations which are too rapid, too swift in their course. So aside from growing his family at a rapid clip, as we saw before, Nick also entered the entertainment industry at a very young age. He was a prodigy. He started performing stand-up comedy at the age of 11, and later in his teens joins the cast of All That. He becomes one of the youngest writers ever in Hollywood at 17. And then he becomes a vice president at Nickelodeon. He gets all these shows, Wildin' Out, America's Got Talent. He's in movies, music, television, all of that. And I want to highlight Pluto Vulcanus because from a mundane perspective, they are opposing each other right now. And as I mentioned, I might have mentioned they're slow moving planets. So it feels like, if it feels like time is speeding up or change is happening too rapidly in the world, it's because they are. It's true. So the world is moving at the same rate at which Nick Cannon is growing his family. a little intense. Right, and I don't have the description on here, but on this day, January 9, 2007, that's the day the first iPhone was released. And we had Mercury Vulcanus on the Aries point. So in the world, we have an explosion of Mercury energy. This is directed force in the field of communications. We can also see Pluto Kronos down here. So that is a leader when it comes to wealth. And Apple definitely increased its market share, completely revolutionized the world of communications on this day. And we're up to our last planet, Poseidon. Poseidon is associated with clarity, integrity, spiritual focus, and inner light. And it governs wisdom, vision, ethics. It's transcendent. It's not clean. It's more clean. It's not dreamy. Poseidon shows up when people align with conviction or when truth breaks through confusion. It often plays a pivotal role in collective inspiration or moral realignment. And if you look at the glyph, it looks like Pisces turned on its side. We see it with psychic abilities, often occult tendencies as well, philosophy and beliefs. You can see on the slide, it says, I clear the fog so you can see what matters. Illuminating. Our first Poseidon example is Quinta Brunson. Yes, I love her too. She's an actress, comedian, writer, and producer, and is best known for creating and executive producing and co-writing the ABC comedy series Abbott Elementary since 2021. And she stars as a second grade teacher named Janine Teagues. She came to prominence though in 2014 from this self-produced Instagram series. It's called Girl Who Has Never Been on a Nice Date. So she would go to the movies and some of the memes, and the guy would buy her popcorn and she's like, "Ooh, he got money." So she went on to produce and act in videos for BuzzFeed Video and developed some streaming series with BuzzFeed as well. And at the 74th Primetime Emmy Awards, she becomes the first Black woman to be nominated 3 times in the comedy category and received nominations for Outstanding Writing, which she won, Outstanding Comedy Series, and Outstanding Lead Actress. So she's definitely shifting the world. And we can see with Sun equals Apollon Poseidon, this is about spreading ideas. And she's definitely doing that through her career. Here we have Nathan Bedford Forrest, who's the founder of the Ku Klux Klan. Poseidon isn't always nice, right? And the KKK is an American Protestant-led Christian extremist, white supremacist, far-right hate group. That's from Wikipedia. They are pro-segregation. And Cupido in this chart equals Saturn plus Poseidon. So this is a mental or world philosophical difference between the community where they want to separate themselves or isolate oneself mentally. This is about separating for ideological reasons, having an inhibited worldview. And there's other people prominent with this Saturn Poseidon picture in their charts as well, like Charles Manson, Martin Luther, Louis Farrakhan. A lot of atheists have this combination, And President Trump. He has the sun equals Saturn Poseidon. Right. And another Poseidon story, the Jonestown Massacre from 1978, with Jim Jones, who was the leader of the People's Temple. On this particular day, California Congressman Leo Ryan flies to Guyana to check out Jonestown to see what's going on, because he had a lot of people from San Francisco who had gone down there to be a part of this cult with the People's Temple. And according to the FBI, this was more like a slave labor camp. You know, it wasn't some like religious haven like they had thought it was going to be. And people were drugged and beaten into submission. So once the congressman gets there, he tells people, you know, let's go back home to the States. You can leave with me. And some of them are ready. And as they're getting ready to fly home, as Ryan and his team are on the airstrip preparing to leave, some folks roll up in a truck from Jonestown, guns blazing, and shoot the congressman and several other people. And back at at Jonestown, people were told that the attack on the planes would bring harm to Jonestown, so they should drink a fruit beverage laced with cyanide. Some people said no, but ultimately 900 people died, including 200 children. So now we do have this phrase that we just casually throw around in our society, right? About drinking the Kool-Aid to signal the strength of someone's commitment to a thing. But here in this chart, we see sun plus Admetos equals Poseidon, and that can represent the day of death as a result of the belief, or even a dead spiritualized man. Okay. Do a time check. Actually, I'm going to go back to this slide really quick. Got about 15 minutes left. Okay, so this talk could have easily been called A Tale of Two Michaels. Michael O'Brien, who is sitting in the room right now, is the first person who introduced me to Uranian astrology. I want to shout you out. However, if I said anything wrong in the talk, it's not his fault. Okay. And the other Michael that inspired this talk was Michael Richards. I don't have the slide for him up here, but I was inspired to do this talk after a trip to the art museum. I stumbled upon this stunning but eerie sculpture by this artist named Michael Richards. And this sculpture was called Tar Baby versus Saint Sebastian. You can look it up on your phones if you want. And you can Google it, but you make sure you add sculpture if you do Google Michael Richards, because you otherwise pull up the racist guy from Seinfeld. Gotta be clear. But using a cast of his own body, Michael Richards transformed himself into a gilded memorial to the Tuskegee Airmen, the African-American flying squadron from World War II. So there's this gold painted figure, complete with a pilot's helmet and uniform, and it's suspended on a metal pole and features dozens of small airplanes crashing into the body, the arms, and the torso of the airmen. And his work in general pays tribute to the Tuskegee Airmen and to other historical and contemporary instances of racial inequality. An additional interesting thing about his story is that in 2001, Richards was killed in the 9/11 attacks at the World Trade Center, where he was working in his studio late in the night and into the morning. And while his statue was about the Tuskegee Airmen, it also became a memorial to him himself, because the planes actually crashed into the tower he was working in. So when I saw that statue, of course, my astrology brain went off. And I was like, I need to, this is an intense moment too, but also I need to see his chart, see what's going on. And when I looked at his chart, I spun around to all the, some of the key points. But when I got to Mars, I saw Mars equals Uranus plus Cupido equals Vesta plus Kronos. So for him, work is about a group of outcasts that are high in the sky, the Tuskegee Airmen. And his work is radical art that happens in a tower. And the violence he experiences is sudden and also happens high up. So that's what inspired me to do this talk today. And now it's time for the reunion. Here they are, all 8. We've seen what they each represent, how they act, and where they've shown up in real moments. They're not just theoretical, they are narrators in the background of your chart. So recapping the season, Cupido threw the party. Hades brought the trauma. Zeus lit a fire. Kronos made it law. Apollon scaled it. Admetos buried it. And Vulcanus blew it up. And then Poseidon tried to spiritually bypass the whole thing. So now you've met all 8. They're distinct, disruptive, and they have a lot to say. And these planets aren't trying to replace anything, but I think they offer a layer that helps clarify patterns traditional astrology might sometimes miss. They're not visible, they're not verified, but they show up over and over again with great consistency and precision. So try them out and see what happens. Even if you don't feel comfortable with the dial just yet, which you probably don't from this talk, but if you have a tight conjunction in your chart with these, or a tight opposition or a tight square, tight is the keyword, then with something in your chart like the sun or the moon or the ascendant and the midheaven, that's going to be meaningful. So definitely check these out. And if you like my style, how I lecture, then you can check out a masterclass I have on the Uranian hard aspects that kind of gets into how the Uranian chart is, or how the Uranian dial is come together. So you can go to learn.homegirlastrology.com, use that code for 30% off through May 31st. And I can come back to that, but here's my slide for you to contact me if you'd like to reach out. Do you have any questions on Zoom or in the room?
Where do you find the ephemeris for the positions of these hypotheticals?
There is an ephemeris specific to it. I don't remember the exact name of it. We can find it there. And it also will show up in your actual software as well, in terms of the time. Yeah.
In the slide that you had about the Oscars, there was a note about Neptune plus the node, which you described as a comic link. And I wanted to know just a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so Neptune plus the node itself is the karmic link.
Yeah.
So when we bring Neptune into it, it describes the type of karmic link that they're going to experience. So when I mentioned that one, I asked what types of people, what types of connections are being established here at this party. So it would be the Neptune type of connections, like movie people, people who lie, people who drink, people who are imaginative as well.
Under the influence.
Yeah, a little delusional maybe.
And that's a karmic.
The node part is the karmic piece. The node represents karmic connections that we have. So if you look at the nodes or the nodes in your chart, you will see what types of karmic connections you have, or intimate connections.
Oh, so you're saying the people at the Oscars were having a karmic connection to each other?
Yeah, there were linkages there. Yeah, within the grouping. Yeah.
Very tight nodes, like 1 degree, 3 degrees, 5 degrees.
If it's on the 360, I would look at up to 5 degrees maybe.
But in a normal chart.
Or I meant on the 360 chart with the wheel.
Right.
Sorry, yeah.
Not the 60, right.
Yeah. Yeah, I went back and forth on the dials here, so maybe a little confusing, but that's for another day. Yeah. Any other questions? Has anyone played a, oh, go ahead.
Do you give any different weight between, let's say, like TransNeptunian planets interacting or aspecting each other versus interacting with sort of the standard observable natal planets?
Yeah, I think in a natal chart, you definitely want to look more at the closer personal planets, because they're going to impact the person more, versus the TransNeptunians are very far out. They move very slowly. So you have to look at a very small dial or aperture to see how they're connecting with each other. So you use those together more from a mundane perspective versus the personalized planets you would use with the natal chart.
Are there any, besides the being on the Aries point, are there any other like points in the chart where if you see a TransNeptunian planet that you know, like, to speak about it, or it jumps out at you?
From a natal standpoint, Yeah, definitely the sun, the moon, the midheaven, the ascendant, also the nodes. Yeah, those would be the big ones.
So if they're like conjunct stuff.
Conjunct, square, opposition. There's some other smaller aspects, but I'm gonna leave those out of this presentation for today. Thank you. Next, Zoom.
Yes, Rick Online wants to know if there's any writing about the origin of the TransNeptunians, about the origin story.
They are mentioned in the rules for planetary picture. Sorry, I need to repeat the questions. Sorry, Zoom people. The question was, are there any writings out there about the origin stories of the TransNeptunian planets? So yes, the rules for planetary pictures covers it. There's a lot of stuff online. There's some books that I have. I think I have some of them in my bag, actually. But yeah, there are several books. I'm happy to share a list out later of other sources that talk about that.
And would you see any difference if one of these is, say, conjunct your south node versus north node, or?
No, they're the same. They're just nodes. They're just connections.
Karmic.
Yeah.
So what would you say a karmic connection with one of these trans-Neptunian planets?
It would describe the type of connection that you're having. So if you had Kronos node, then your friends or connections might be people who are higher up in the world. They might literally be high up. Yeah, they're descriptive, honestly, in how they respond to the other planets.
So this dial is available on like our regular programs too?
It depends on what you're using. So it's definitely available in Astro Gold. That's where this is from. Solar Fire has a dial. Nova Chart Wheels is definitely a better version of the dial. But for making slides, it's a lot easier for me to just do it on Astro Gold. And it's a much simpler version on Astro Gold. Nova Chart Wheels has full-on planetary pictures because it is really geared towards Uranian astrology. So it doesn't just have these direct midpoints that we looked at. It also has indirect ones. And it's a little more challenging to navigate and learn. So that's why I didn't use it here, but it's definitely a great tool for that. Yeah. And I think Sirius might also show dials as well, but I don't use that one.
You had mentioned the book, was it the rules of planetary fate? You said it was like the Uranian.
Yeah, the rules for planetary pictures. That's the book that I referenced earlier for folks on Zoom as well. Yeah, it has all of these planetary, these are essentially, we're looking at planetary pictures. These midpoints that we're seeing are examples of how the planets are coming together in a symmetrical way and contacting each other to produce these things that are manifesting into the world. So this is, I mean, it's not cookbook astrology, but it's close with the rules for planetary pictures because you can go there and see what these combinations are doing. And it's fun to look at, honestly, especially with mundane charts and see how things are showing up in the world.
Do you use this in your practice for natal also?
Yes, I do. Yeah, so I definitely love using the Apollon midpoints to help people see where they're going to be successful. They seem to appreciate that. Right. It's nice to have something positive to share with you sometimes, especially in Uranian. It can get a little gloomy sometimes. Get a little tense with the Zeus and the Poseidon, yeah, and the Admetos. It's a lot. But again, it is about what they're paired with, and you can find ways to work through all of these. But I think they definitely show up in multiple ways, as I said before. So the Admetos can be stillness, but it can also be a standstill in a negative way. So it just kind of depends on what is being brought in. Anybody else? I'll bring back slide. And does anyone who practices Uranian astrology have anything interesting that they may have seen in their charts related to any of these planets? No, we've got some folks here. Did you see anything in your chart?
Yes, I have Cupido and I have a midpoint, Cupido and the last one. What was the last one?
Poseidon?
Cupido and Poseidon and Libra square my Cancer ascendant. The
Okay.
midpoint of those were my Cancer
Yeah,
ascendant.
nice. So Cupido Poseidon is going to be what? Anybody want to take a guess based on what we talked about?
Meeting of spiritual people.
Yeah, in the environment. So these are the people you're interacting with. Look at that. I love that for us. Anybody else?
There's one published book by there's one published paper by Admetos called On Colors, Numbers, and Sound, and that's where he outlines his theory and his philosophy of how we discovered the TransNeptunian planets. And in RPP, in the rules of planetary pictures as well, there's a description of how we came to that, to the TransNeptunian planets as well.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, folks on Zoom. So there was an additional reference that was shared by Michael Bryan. Thank you. There is a paper that Alfred Witte wrote. What was the name of it again?
On colors, number, and sound.
On colors,
numbers, and sound.
On colors, numbers, and sound, that details how he came to his conclusions around the TransNeptunians.
Nice Zeus on my south node in Virgo.
So Zeus node, you've got some connections with this directed energy. It may be creative, procreative. You know, spicy friends. But it's so fun to see something happen in the world and be able to go back and pull up the chart and see how it's all coming together. Yeah, you can definitely follow me here on all of my platforms. YouTube, post some videos every now and then, trying to get more regular with that. There's my website, homegirlastrology.com, and Instagram as well. And I have a really fun newsletter that I send out on a weekly basis where I look at what's going on in the sky from an astrology standpoint, and I also pull a tarot card for the week. We bring it all together. A little irreverent, I guess. Yeah. Any last questions?